We have been focusing so much on different areas of health without focusing on something so massive for women that can change their lives and change the way that they function and give them so much more freedom without downtime and major surgeries and everything else. And so I absolutely loved the Empower platform because of that option to change women's lives and do something so different. The other part is when I look at so many different med spas popping up everywhere, is the key to success in a lot of things is really being niched and so differentiated from others that it's so hard for anybody to compete with who you are and what you're doing. Well, I can tell you there's just not a ton of people out there all the time that are willing to be so focused in women's health. And so I knew that if we really focused here and took care of women and did a great job, we would be okay. And they would really appreciate somebody caring for them as well. But sometimes it gets interesting to figure out how to market for stuff like this, right? Because you can't really post the before and afters the same way. It gets a little tricky, like Facebook will shut you down, right? So I had to get a little bit more creative. You would never believe what kind of controversy a scrunchie could create. But somehow it does. I've got people spitting out their drinks over a scrunchie. So one thing that we did early on is I knew in the market that we had to kind of break down the barriers and we had to make this something relatable or something fun to talk about so that we could have a serious conversation. So in our practice, we call the Empower treatments the Perky Peach. And this is a way for women to come in and we just have the conversation with everybody that walks in the door. And so you'll see that through the slides that we have it called Perky Peach. So we've been doing this for years in our office too, and there's still some people who haven't come in, and I'm always got to get their attention some too. So how many of you guys actually remember the 10-year challenge on Facebook? So this is where you would take your picture now, and you would have a picture from 10 years ago, and you would compare them, and maybe there were a couple filters added and everything else. Well, we kind of took the same approach with Perky Peach, just to, get people's attention. I may get fired today, it's okay. So one of the funny parts here too is that when we first went to go look at the devices in person, it was late, it was during COVID, things were shut down, we weren't meeting in big groups like this. And so we had started our session at like 9 p.m. To go see the devices. And at about midnight, I looked across the room and I saw Empower and I was like, oh, what's that? And they're like, it's women's health. It's not for you. Like, you're an ER doctor. Don't worry about that. And I was like, oh, you guys know how many kids I have, right? I'm like, I can't jump on a trampoline. Like, every time I sneeze, this is what's happening. I'm like the perfect person to talk about this with everybody. And it's so funny. They really just try to get me to go away from it. But I just wasn't having it. I knew it was something that I had a passion for, that I felt like I could help women with. So what I felt is important and where we got successful in our practice with this is that we were willing to initiate the conversation. So I think that's one of the key points to this, is that women are sort of taught to not talk about this as much. This is something that's sort of kept quiet. We don't get into all this. I even went to my own OBGYN, and I hadn't been in a while after my daughter was sick. And I went to my appointment sort of expecting to have a questionnaire just to know what symptoms I was having, if I was having incontinence, anything like that, and there was just nothing. So the person that I personally trusted as a physician to ask some of those questions wasn't asking it either. So then I realized that women have no one they're talking to about this in a lot of instances. Nobody's listening to them, nobody's even asking the questions, and then it's just left untreated for years and years, or maybe they receive a response, but it's not a good option for their lifestyle and they have nowhere else to go. So in our office specifically, our questionnaire that we start everybody with is a hormone questionnaire. And this does talk about incontinence and some other sexual dysfunction so that we can open the doors to conversations with our patients. So I will tell you that the data that I'm going to show you, I think can be a little bit skewed too, because if you have honest true conversations with your female patients in your practice and they really trust you, I think so many report symptoms. And I would say in our office specifically, 95% of the women were reporting symptoms that we could treat with Empower, but nobody was ever addressing any of it. And so we really wanted to do something about that. And keep this in mind, you guys have seen my office, you've seen where I'm at. We do so many of these. We actually do more than anybody in the United States.